All right, welcome back to Tell Your Story Alaska. I'm very excited about this interview. I have with me Father Marc Dunaway, an Orthodox priest. Am I going to use the right terminology? Or an Orthodox priest right here in Eagle River at St. John's. Make sure I get it right. St. John's Orthodox Church.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you've been here for most of your life. Your parents moved here. Your parents used to work for Campus Crusade for Christ as evangelicals. They later converted to Orthodoxy.
That's right.
And you're also a part of a initiative called the Lausanne Orthodox Initiative. Is that correct?
That's right.
Which is a collaboration between evangelicals and Orthodox believers, so that they can talk about missions in Alaska in collaboration with one another. So then you've been doing that since 2022, but the history of that goes back even further.
That's right.
Yeah, and so I did an episode recently about the history of the Russian Orthodox Church, which you listened to, and you and I got in touch, and we decided to have a conversation about all of those things.
That's right.
I think that takes some courage. So thank you for coming on. Father Dunaway.
No problem. I'm really glad to be talking to you.
And even when I was coming over, I was like, I don't want to be confrontational, contentious. You and I share a lot of things, but we also have a lot of differences. And I just wanted to learn. And so I have questions about these differences and similarities, and of course, your story. Okay. So let's dive into it.
Whatever you like.
Let's start with about your background. Tell us about where you grew up. Tell us about the journey. Apparently, it wasn't you, it was your parents who had this journey from evangelical to Protestantism. And of course, you watched this happen throughout your childhood. So tell me about your background. Let's try to get a sense of who you are.
Yeah, my parents, all my ancestry comes from Kentucky. My parents became Christians in midlife, really zealous Christians, and wanted to go into ministry when my father was 40. They ended up going to Campus Crusade for Christ and becoming members of their staff in 1970. And in earlier than that, 1968, Campus Crusade for Christ sent my father to Anchorage, Alaska as part of their staff. Not to work on the campus, but to work on the military bases since he had had a military background. I was in junior high, and we worked up here with Campus Crusade for Christ for 4 years. And it was a wonderful time. And so I began living here in Alaska from that time on. After 1972, they left Campus Crusade Christ staff because they felt the need to disciple people who were hanging around. It was not working to just convert people and send them off to the churches. They had converts, but they just kept sticking around our house.
Yeah.
So in 1972, we bought a large home in Eagle River, which is where we're at now. Mm-hmm. And those people kind of moved in and lived with my parents. And by that time, I was in high school, so I became part of the team. I always wanted to work or be a missionary myself. So we were a team together, just studying what God wanted us to do, living the Christian life. We were inspired by the L'Abri home that Edith and Francis Schaeffer had in Switzerland. My parents used that as a model.
Wow.
But what happened before too long was that we just felt something was missing in our Christian experience. We wanted the truth. We wanted to serve God and know God, and we had many good things that we appreciated. But as we began to hook up with some other people who had similar backgrounds, what we discovered we were missing was an experience of the church. My parents, through Campus Crusade, kind of left any denomination, and the converts we made just joined us as a Bible study group.
Okay.
We didn't even meet on Sunday mornings. We met on Saturday nights.
Yeah.
And we had so far gone away from just the organized church that we knew something was missing. And that led us in the early 1970s to connect with people who had a similar background in the lower 48 and open the door of church history. So we started in the New Testament and said, where did this go? And we ran into the church beyond the New Testament. And it was so much that we didn't know. And then we ran into, by that church history, ran into the Orthodox Church. And over a period of about 8 years or so, we began to learn more about church history. We learned the things that we had sort of not known about that were an essential part of Christian life. And we ran into the Orthodox Church. We didn't even know it existed. We knew about the Catholic Church, kind of. And so we made a journey to Orthodoxy with a group of people around the country. and began knocking on the door.
No, that's interesting because for me, you mentioned you didn't know much about the Catholic Church or the Orthodox Church. I can say my experience is sort of similar. Growing up in the Protestant church myself in the Chicago area, I grew up around Catholics. I mean, all of my friends were, Catholics. And I had a lot of Protestant friends too, but probably more Catholics than anything else. But Orthodoxy was just non-existent. The word, I heard it here and there, but I knew almost nothing. And so that was your similar experience. And then as you studied her church history, what you found was the Orthodox Church was all the way back to, the very first church. And the Orthodox Church is the one that has carried through the centuries.
That's what we've discovered. We kind of knew the Catholic Church just from our theology and stuff because Protestantism came from the Catholic Church. But we'd never known about Orthodoxy. So we looked into church history and we got to the Great Council of Nicaea, which was held in 325 to answer the basic question, who is Jesus Christ? We already know, but somebody's coming along and challenging this and saying that he's not really God. The church leaders got together. They said, no, we've always believed he's truly God. That's what you have to be Christian.
Yeah.
And for us, that was like an affirmation that we're on the right track. As naive as it may seem, a few years later, we discovered that the Catholic Church kind of altered the statement of faith. For us, that was like in a naive sense, we said, well, we're not going that way then. We'll go with the ones who stayed with it. And that was the Orthodox Church. So the two branches of the church that are old are the Catholics and the Orthodox.
Yes.
But when we looked at Orthodoxy, it seemed like very foreign and took a lot to... So our first experience in the modern era to go to an Orthodox church was St. Innocent's in Anchorage. We went there. We've been studying it through the church history, and we said, well, where is it today? So we went to St. Innocent's for a church service. And it was the cultural differences hid the what we wanted to see. We couldn't make the gap in our mind because it looked with candles and incense and brass candle holders and icons. We were getting used to that, but it was a little hard for us to take in all of a sudden and realize that was the same historic church. Later, of course, we began to understand it better and could make that connection.
Yeah.
So we lived in Anchorage right across the street from the Orthodox Church. My dad was Campus Crusade for Christ, and we'd have Bible studies on Saturday nights. The streets would fill up with people coming to the Bible study. And the Orthodox priest, he'd look out and say, what kind of cult is this? It was in the 60s and 70s. That's what people thought.
Yeah.
We went over one time when they were having their Easter service, which they hold at midnight.
Yeah.
And we saw all these cars parked on the street at midnight. And we went over and we peered in the windows. And we saw all this going on. And we said, what kind of cult is this? So we were right across the street from each other.
And you're looking at each other, both saying, and you're both looking at each other, what kind of cult are you?
Yes.
Interesting.
And then 4 years later, we began our journey to Orthodoxy. And then we met and became great friends. And Father Nicholas Harris is still a friend to this day. He's older, he's retired. But we just have a dear friendship over many years when we didn't even know each other at that point.
Wow. So since junior high, you've basically lived on this very property. Is that accurate?
Yeah, since high school. I was in Anchorage for 4 years and then out here.
Okay. So, this place kind of is your, even you just gave me a tour of the church, and your parents are buried in the little cemetery right over there. I saw it Dunaway right over there. Very cool. So could you lay out, let's start with similarities. Now, you've been a part of this initiative to talk about where do we agree. Let's acknowledge where we disagree and not be contentious over it. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me about the areas between Orthodox and Evangelicals where they have good agreement.
I think it's possible that they recognize a kinship. There are great differences on the externals. And many Protestants are very wary of icons and even liturgical prayer.
Okay.
It's very unfamiliar to them. So they're wary of that. But underneath, I think they have found that the Orthodox have a real, in their best expression, not all of us represent our faith as best as we should.
That's true of any institution, though, right? Yeah.
In our best expression, there's a real desire for truth, a real desire for the love of God, a real desire to serve people and understand that this is what the Christian life is like. And an emphasis on who Christ is, that he is God, come to save us. And that resonates, of course, with evangelicalism. And evangelicalism coming from Protestantism kind of lost a lot of the church aspects of its history. It kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater. And when I became Orthodox, I got to relearn some of those historic things that we had missed. And so our bishop told us when we became Orthodox in 1987, we were knocking on the doors and the door opened. He said, I want you to take Orthodoxy to America. So that's been our mission since 1987, to let other Americans know about the Orthodox Church and to make kind of a bridge that they can come and know it.
Yeah, and so part of your mission, you see it as even with this initiative you're doing, is to make that bridge, because it's true that even me growing up in a Protestant church, I mean, we talked about a little bit downstairs looking at your sanctuary. It's this incredibly beautiful architecture with images around that are beautiful. It makes you look up. It gives you a sense of reverence. And I do think in the Protestant church, even where I grew up, we've lost that reverence. There's reverence in liturgy. There's a seriousness about it. And a lot of course, not all, but in general, the Protestant church has become a bit flippant about it. We're trying to be real. We're trying to dress like everyone else. It's almost become very entertaining. But people want real spiritual walks.
Right.
And even when I walked into this church, I immediately looked up. And so immediately you forget about yourself and you're looking outward.
Yeah.
And that's something that the Orthodox Church has maintained over the year, and the Protestants have really kind of
I think the Protestants, right, the evangelicals put a lot of emphasis on carrying Christ's message to the world.
Yeah.
So their emphasis was to meet people where they're at.
Right.
To break down any barriers that might keep people from seeing Jesus as who he is. But what are we bringing them to? And that is the life of worshiping God in the traditional way, and the church life.
Yeah.
So that's what many people found, that Orthodox supplied what they wanted. You don't just become a Christian in order to get more people to become Christians, in order to get more people to become Christians. What is the content of the Christian life, the spiritual walk, the hope that we live for? And that's what Orthodoxy filled up for us.
Yes. I heard this great story lately. I think it's been making its rounds on social media, but it's the story about these army or military recruits that came to a school of, seniors in high school. And the Navy guy got up and said, "This is why you should join the Navy. The Navy's the best." And he had a PowerPoint presentation. The Army guy got up, "This is why you should join the Army. And why, it would be great if you joined the Army." Then the Marine got up and he stood on the stage, no PowerPoint. He just looked across the crowd and he shook his head and he said, "No, I'm not seeing the potential for anyone here who's good enough to join the Marines. But if you want to talk, I'll be in the back."
Yeah.
Everyone lined up for the Marine. And the point is, people want to be challenged. They don't want to be coddled. People want something meaningful, which means it's going to be harder. It's richer. And I think the Protestant church used to have that. We have a hymn book in our church. We sing these hymns, and they're not rock songs. They're not exciting. They're not entertaining, but they're beautiful. And I got to tell you, we sing these hymns in my little church, and they're my favorite. I love them because of their richness. And recently had a young man start coming to church with us, and he walks in, and he's a young man, and I'm thinking he might think this is boring, but I'm standing next to him, we're singing these hymns, and he's tearing up. I'm like, "Hey, you okay?" And he goes, "This is what I needed." He said, I won't name the church, but I went to this other church, and it felt like it was just a rock concert. It felt like they were just trying to entertain me, and this is what I needed. And I go, "Oh my goodness." Where have we gone off the rails here? And I know that the Orthodox Church kind of prides itself, and rightly so, in maintaining that reverence, in maintaining the sameness throughout history. And that's from my research in Orthodoxy, this is one of their main points. The Catholic Church has changed their theology a bit over the years, but the Orthodox Church has maintained it the same. Would you say that's an accurate?
That's an accurate. I think even any historians or theologians that look, even Catholic side as well, would look at the Orthodoxy and say that's more like the early church in its theology and its roots.
And it's my understanding as well that you were saying just to me earlier that you have 24 new people attending, and you have 24 people in your new to Orthodoxy class right now. And from my understanding and research, the draw to Orthodoxy is this consistency. People want a solid rock to stand on, not a church that's going to ebb and flow according to the culture and all of that. They want something solid to stand on that's not going to change. Would you say that's one of the...
I'd say that, and like you mentioned, the reverence.
And the
The
reverence.
reverence. That's what they miss. I mean, to stand in worship beside other people and know you're in the presence of God.
Yeah.
Sense that, and to offer something together to God, a prayer, a hymn. If I tell people, if you go to an Protestant church, it's 90% talk about God and 10% talk to God. An Orthodox church is 90% talk to God and 10% about Him.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
the feeling is very different. And I know the evangelicals have their reason for the emphasis that they have on wanting to evangelize.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, that is what was missing. Even my grandmother, who was Methodist all of her life, that's my roots, when she came to visit us in her 70s or 80s, she said, "Wow, this is the first time I've worshiped in church." Even though she was used to what they did, but it was always about, about God. Not
Like it's very academic, like heady,
Yeah.
and not hearty.
That's right. And so I think, so now in the country, in the United States, maybe around the world, there are many people coming to the Orthodox churches. So 24 people now coming to our church we don't even have an outreach program. They're just showing up every Sunday.
Wow.
Saying, what is the Orthodox Church? I've looked at it online.
Right.
And in others of our churches in bigger cities, there's like 100 people coming all at once, and young couples and young men, a lot.
Wow.
So they're looking for some spirituality. Somebody pointed out recently, all the people who left the church and became nuns didn't become atheists. They just became seekers for something other than what they had. They didn't give up belief in God. They're just still hungry for God.
Yeah. I think a hopeful agnostic is a term that goes around for them.
So,
yeah, fascinating.
So we have people coming, and they're learning, and
yeah,
it's a great responsibility, I feel, to convey to them the Orthodox faith in such a way that they can understand it and take it up for themselves.
I've thought about that a lot too, what you just said, because I think about the life and ministry of Jesus. It talks about how crowds literally followed him around. Why is that? Why do people want to, they leave their homes and they walk a long distance to follow a guy, and they're out there so long they were getting hungry. He had to feed them, right? That's the feeding of the 5,000. And then here in our churches, we're like, well, we need to do things that are appealing to people. We need to entertain them and all this kind of stuff. And that's just not the case. That's just not the case. So,
yeah, one of our favorite quotes from St. Augustine is what, you have made us for yourself, O God, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. And so we find that that's what the human heart wants, God.
yeah.
And that's what we find the people coming. So,
Yeah.
and the Orthodox Church provides that deep theology and that deep worship and the deep spirituality to feed people. It doesn't change a lot. It's not built on the most popular speaker. It's got this deep tradition. So that's the rich part that I would like even my evangelical friends to know more about. And they do.
Yeah.
The work that Joel does up in Wasilla is a lot of times reintroducing the Psalms to their church.
Yeah.
That kind of worship. And that's what he brings from this.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that, because it is true. So much of my faith walk has been very academic, and it's because of my background. That's what I've always been presented. But to actually experience God is another thing. And that's why I went to I won't say where it was, but it was in a village. I went to a funeral, and it was held in an Orthodox church in a village. And the liturgy was beautiful. The body was in the middle of the room, and it wasn't like a stage. It was more like everyone surrounded the body. And the priest was a native man, and he sang for about an hour and a half this liturgy. And having little exposure to the Orthodox experience, if you will, I was listening carefully to the words, and I thought, well, I don't know what to think about the Orthodox Church, but this liturgy is beautiful.
Yeah.
The words are beautiful. I don't know what was going on in the hearts of the people in there. I had the impression that no one goes there except for something like a funeral. That was just what people were telling me. But all that aside, the liturgy was, I didn't disagree with any of it.
Right.
Very beautiful. So,
and that's what evangelicals have found when they come to Orthodoxy, is that the liturgy is lots of scripture.
yeah.
And it doesn't have the things that they're trained to sort of be suspicious about towards Catholicism.
Yeah.
So we don't have a pope in Orthodoxy.
Right.
Our priests are allowed to be married.
Which you were saying earlier, you're thankful for that.
I'm thankful for that, and the church is too. So they get a priest's wife who understands family life, and I have children, so I understand what family life is like. So we don't have a pope. Our priests marry. These kind of things, the evangelicals, then it kind of takes away some of the things that were obstacles to them coming back to the historic church.
Okay.
They have to understand icons, but then they can understand, okay, icons aren't idols, and they are like family pictures. That you might have a picture of your family, and if you were away from home, you might even kiss it. But you're not kissing the paper. It's representing your family, and that's basically what icons are for us.
So let's talk about that a little more, because you've brought up icons a few times as sort of a barrier between evangelicals and orthodoxy. So let's talk about that. Could you explain or articulate that barrier? What have you found is the evangelicals' issue with these icons?
I think worrying that they are like idol worship.
Okay. And how is it not idol worship?
Well, actually, the Orthodox Church went through 100 years where it debated whether there were many Orthodox Christians who rejected the use of icons in the 700s.
Oh, interesting.
And said these are not, we're not using them properly. People are thinking about them magically. They're thinking about them like idols. We're taking them out of the churches and destroying them. And there was great movements across the early church to take them and destroy them. But then another part of the church said, hold on. Maybe there are some that use it wrongly, but there's really actually a very good tradition here that is very allowed. We can depict Jesus as a human being because he was a human being. We can't depict God the Father because he never became human. But Christ, the Son of God, did. And that we can depict him in an icon is an important theological statement. And that we can have these icons to remind us of him and to remind us of his real humanity and the saints, and to remind us that there are family pictures. That we're not just now, it's just me alone as a Christian, that I'm part of this, like it says in the book of Hebrews, a great cloud of witnesses. So the icons help us depict that, they help us teach our theology, and they help us just embrace it by that imagery. And once you see Orthodox Christians in practice, you see they're not treating them like idols. It's just part of their beauty and part of their worship. And so just a slight getting over that, I think probably a reaction to what maybe, again, they picked up from certain Catholic practices or something.
Yeah, I've definitely heard within the Protestant church, should we even have an image of Jesus? Like some people, a pastor in his office will have an image of Jesus. Is that an idol? Is that idol? I know there's like inner debates about that. But so you're saying, these icons, for example, are just sort of examples of faith that we can be reminded of rather than something you actually worship.
Right. We don't worship them. I mean, and so the church had this big controversy.
Yeah.
And then it had a council in 787, and they went back to the very place where the very first council was, the big one, Nicaea. And they said, what's the truth about icons? And they said, icons are allowed. We don't worship them. We only worship God. But we can venerate the icons, but we're not even venerating the wood. We're honoring and esteeming the person that's depicted. That is the theology right there written in the Council of Nicaea.
It's kind of reverence for the person's faith, not really the person, but more like if that person has this kind of faith, what does that mean for me?
And of course, all faith is only valuable if it's incarnate. I mean, Jesus said that Peter, he would build his church. And John the Baptist was called the greatest all born of women. So people themselves can embody the grace of God, and they become heroes for us and role models from all traditions and all faiths. So and so we have saints in our church. They're just the heroes of the church that inspire us.
Yeah. Tell me about the one in specific that you mentioned in your email to me was St. Olga of Kwethluk.
Yeah.
I've been to Kwethluk. I've only landed my plane there, and I didn't get the chance to go in town, unfortunately. But I know some people from there, and I know that they recently, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they kind of unearthed her remains, and they put those remains in the building. Now, tell me about that. What is the meaning of why dig up the remains and put them in the church? I mean, that sounds like a relic to me. Is there not danger of, having an object that people might mistaken for a divine thing? Or do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, the idea, and I think this is the basic Christian idea, is that God's grace to us often takes on physical forms. He told us in order to be saved, you've got to go get in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the water like magically saves you? No, but by the grace of God in that, he knew we were physical beings.
Mm-hmm.
By being immersed in water, that's how he's going to give you the grace by faith.
Mm.
But to just separate the grace of God from this physical world is not what God intended. He knew we need it. So even how do you sustain life as a Christian? He told his disciples, take communion,
Mm-hmm.
take bread and wine and eat.
Mm.
This is how I'm going to feed you my life.
Mm.
So that physical things can have spiritual grace connected to them. We don't, that's like core belief.
Mm-hmm.
So we make the sign of the cross when we pray.
Yeah.
The sign of the cross is a prayer for us sometimes. So it's the physical side of being spiritual. So that the grace of God can reside in people is nothing surprising to us. And even when they die, we treat their body with respect. We treat anybody's body with respect because it was part of their human person.
Yeah.
We're not just souls, we're bodies and souls.
Mm-hmm.
So the body was treated with respect and grace. And when the church recognizes someone as having been a saint, part of what is done sometime is to bring their body and bring the relics of their body into the church.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always done. In some places you can't do it, obviously, but it was done for Olga. So her body was unearthed and then brought into the church and is in a casket there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's just to be able to, the idea would be even the grace of God that she partook of during her life. When she dies, I guess the hope and the belief would be that there's still some of that grace of God, even in her body as it is. And that's sort of kind of one of the assumptions of the church and the beliefs of the church. It's not like the core dogma, but it's just part of our family way of living.
So similar to the way in baptism, you're dunked in physical water.
Yeah.
And so you get the overlap of physical things and spiritual things, and they give meaning to each other. In a similar way, you have these iconography in the Orthodox Church for similar reasons.
And you could say even more so, that's the whole purpose of creation, is to communicate to us the grace of God, of everything, the trees, the water, the rivers, the mountains, the skies. That's what God gave us this world for, is to give us his grace and show us his love and his beauty and who he is. So that Jesus took some of those natural things and also imbued them with an even greater grace to restore us and heal us, only fits with the pattern of why we were even made. And that human beings are this strange mixture of spiritual and physical beings.
Yeah.
Unlike the angels, they are only spiritual.
Yeah.
And we have this mixture.
Yes, it's an interesting point because, within Protestantism or any sort of religious idea like that, anything can be abused in a bad way, right? And I know as a Protestant, my signals are going up. Well, that what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Is there not a danger, like any other system can be abused? Is there not a danger of saying, well, Saint Olga, there's somehow I need Saint Olga's relics for grace to be dispensed to me? Is there a danger of misplacing the meaning of it?
Yes, of course, because we're human beings, we tend to do that. But in my study of Orthodox history, from the beginning of the Bible times to now, what you see is it gets a little off track, but you see it self-corrects. And so you see in the church, and maybe it's in every part of the church given enough time, there is a self-correcting that takes place if people are willing to change and they're willing to ask God to lead them. Then we can change.
Yeah, and that requires humility.
It requires humility, and he wants to lead us. So, if we ask God to lead us, then we should live by faith that he actually will. We became Orthodox simply because this is where God seemed to be leading us. And there were lots of red flags that would have warned us off, but we said, no, this is what God has opened the door to. And so we go. And so the church can self-correct, and it has. Yes, it can get off track.
Yeah.
One of in the creed in Nicaea that was written in 325, it just says we believe in God the Father, we believe in Jesus, who is truly human and truly divine, we believe in the Holy Spirit, but the last line is, and I believe in the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. So to actually have belief in the church, that's a really interesting thing to think about, and that is that God will lead it and guide it, and it's not alone, and it can self-correct. And to disconnect from it is not what you should do. You should be connected.
Yeah, I see that a lot is people who do leave the church. I have friends that I went to Bible college with that have left the faith altogether. And what they almost always point out is hypocrisy. And I think what you're saying is true, is that, God does not abandon his church. Yes, his church is abused. People in the name of Christ, in the name of religion, do these awful things. People go, well, I don't want nothing to do with that. Well, gosh, rightly so. What you're rejecting is a corruption of it.
Yeah.
That's what you're rejecting. But you shouldn't judge a system by its abuse.
Right.
So,
Because Paul told us the Holy Spirit dwells in the church.
yeah.
And us as a people. I mean, he was always correcting problems at Corinth.
Yeah.
Or
Oh, God.
he was
Especially
always
Corinth. Yeah.
Jesus had Judas among the 12.
Yes.
This is humanity, but it's still, there's some divine grace given to the church.
Mm-hmm.
And when we became Orthodox, that's what we felt we got kind of grafted into. And we were very grateful because before that we were by ourselves, connected to nothing, living in this house over here, wondering what's missing.
Yeah.
And so we said, wow, that's what was missing. We thank God that we've been grafted into that historic church and we live our life according to that tradition now.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. Like you said, people are wanting something hard. To become an Orthodox Christian is to embrace the call, even if you don't live up to it, that you will fast almost a third of the year.
Oh, wow.
Day.
Really?
Yeah. For meat, you will eat no meat. And if you're really strict, no dairy. That's the normal Christian life is fasting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so,
Fasting is such a good discipline.
yeah. So that's part of the ancient tradition. So
yes.
we learn that.
Man, thank you for tackling my questions. I really you're very courageous. Thank you. I have one more question about this. Is from my own just studies in Orthodoxy, especially because of the context is Orthodoxy is such a rich history in Alaska. Orthodoxy was the first outside faith to enter the state through the Russians. And they basically, I did a whole episode on this. They basically did a really good job of evangelizing. And compared to some other denominations where there was abuses and stuff, there was a lot less of that in the Orthodox Church. But one of the things I've researched in my search in Orthodoxy is that there's no salvation outside the Orthodox Church. And I've heard that quite a bit. I've heard that in modern times, that's been relaxed a lot more. But historically, there's no salvation outside the Orthodox Church. Could you tell me your thoughts on that? I really want to learn more about that.
Yeah, there in the early church, in the late 200s, was a saint by the name of Cyprian. He was Bishop of Carthage, and he wrote, you cannot have God for your father if you don't have the church for your mother.
Okay.
A Christian alone is no Christian. But what he was trying to say is that an essential part of the gospel is the community of the faithful.
Okay.
That's what he was trying to say. It's not a Lone Ranger solo life. It's a community life. That's what it's supposed to be. Now, if you get Orthodox Christians who have been isolated from the rest of Western Christianity for centuries, it can be hard for them to come to Western. And then they have the split. There was a split between the Catholics and the Orthodox in 1054. So they look at and they think, well, we are the true church. I don't know who they are. And you amplify that by centuries. And then they can't see who are these people. They have a different way of Christian life. And it's easy to say, well, we're true. I don't know about them.
Yeah.
But now we can be more humble and say, wait, God didn't abandon them. And they have trouble understanding our ways because we've been separated by culture for hundreds of years. Now we need to learn about each other. And so there are Orthodox who kind of retreat into kind of we're the only true church. You can't have salvation outside of us. That certainly was what St. Cyprian meant. That's too narrow.
Okay.
You can't go to Kentucky and tell my grandparents that they weren't real Christians because they were Methodists and never heard of the Orthodox Church. They never had the chance to.
Yeah.
Orthodoxy got locked into the Islamic world by persecution. It was locked behind the Russian world by communism. There wasn't a lot of interchange. It's only now that when I was in the 70s and you were looking years and years ago, you wouldn't have seen Orthodoxy. Now you find Orthodoxy in this country. It's more obvious. So now people are talking, and it's a good thing. And we're getting to know each other and learn the strengths of each.
Yeah.
And I think that is really possible and really important. And I'm glad to be part of it and keep pushing for that dialogue.
Yeah, thank you. That's really clarifying. That was kind of one of my biggest questions that I wanted to ask you about. So thank you for that. Could you tell me about, I'd like to know more about in our email correspondence, you mentioned in Alaska, there's the Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, and Antiochian Orthodox Church, and this particular one is Antiochian. And you said you're kind of a unified and you interact a lot with those other churches, but can you describe those distinctions?
Yeah, if you go to Russia, most Christians are Russian Orthodox. There are missionaries from other churches there. If you go to Greece, most people are Greek Orthodox.
Okay.
So Orthodoxy has been the religion of its country naturally through its history. When you come to North America, you got all these immigrants, and they bring all their religions and their faiths with them. So we are the melting pot of Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox and Ukrainian Orthodox and Serbian Orthodox coming to this country.
Yeah.
Ideally, the Orthodox Church in any one country should be united. Ours in America isn't. They're officially by their
well, America's made up of the world, right?
But we know that's against our theology. So it probably give us another 100 years, and we'll make one united Orthodox Church in America. So that's the deal. And so we have all these emigres. Alaska is unique because it's under the missionary movement of Russia. 99% of the churches in Alaska are officially from the Russian tradition and under the bishop of Sitka in Anchorage. As we became Orthodox in Alaska, we started knocking on doors along with our friends in the lower 48. How do we get into this church? Nobody could give us an answer because I think they were as bewildered by us as we were by them. I don't know, what are we going to do with these people? So they told us, travel eventually to Istanbul and go talk to the patriarch there, the bishop. He will give you an answer.
Wow.
We went in 1985 all the way to
You went?
Istanbul.
I
was there.
No way.
I was the photographer kid, so I was the kid that went with the photographer. We went. And he said, we can't give you an answer. We don't know. Go back to North America and talk to the bishop there. We were really upset and really frustrated. We were sincerely wanting to know, how do we get in? And then it just so happened the patriarch of Antioch, the bishop from Antioch, was visiting this country. Some of our leaders went and met in his hotel. He said to his friend bishop here, help him get in. Do whatever you got to do. Bring him in.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point. So I say that was the door that opened for us. We knocked on the Greek door. It didn't open. The Russian door, it didn't open. But Antioch did. My suspicion is the Antiochian church is the church that's in the Middle East. So the Russians easily identify their culture and their faith together. And the Greeks do the same thing. But in the Arab countries, they don't identify Christianity and their culture anymore. It's Islam and their culture. So Christianity is not so culturally tied, and they just were welcoming. They opened the door and said, come in. And we came in 1987 and have been part of the Antiochian church ever since. But we're still part of the greater Orthodox Church in the largest picture. And we can, anywhere I go in the world, I'm a priest in the Orthodox Church. I can serve in the churches, and our people can receive communion. And
this is what fascinates me about America. I love American history. I mean, I had chances to, do missionary work and elsewhere in the world, but I really did want to stay on this continent because of its uniqueness in the world. Here's this new world. Native people lived here, but it's like the rest of the world came in, and there was this kind of, I don't know how else to put it, clash of cultures, and people from totally different perspectives are living together, and they're looking at each other like, what do we do with ourselves right now? It's such a unique thing in world history, and I always found fascinating. And that affects the church, like you just said. Yeah, very fascinating.
So that's what we're doing, and that's how we are. So there's 3 Antiochian churches in Alaska. One Greek church, and then
Russian Orthodox. Because in my experience in the villages, it's almost always Russian Orthodox.
Yeah, that's right. And they grew, and they really grew well in the early 1800s. But when America bought Alaska from the Russians, all the Russian connection kind of got cut. And that left a lot of the native churches alone with no longer a supply of priests and interchange and that kind of things. And then they were treated as sometimes non-American because they weren't like American Christianity. And their faith was looked down on in their culture. So that's kind of a sad thing that happened.
It is,
That's part of what makes them in the villages be suspicious of other Christians than themselves.
It's an understandable suspicion.
So they close in the doors and don't want to go out. You can understand it.
And I've had a handful of episodes on in the past is the sort of the dark history of Protestants in Alaska, where they've really made horrible mistakes where they were washing kids out mouths out with soap if they spoke their native tongue and stuff like that. We reject that now and we look back and we go, why? What were we thinking? The damage we caused was really terrible.
And the Orthodox missionary work in Alaska was very different.
Yes.
They took the people where they were and saw in them even a holiness about many things. Their reverence for nature was something that resonated with the Orthodox and the Orthodox with them. And the native people looked at like St. Herman of Alaska and saw in him a simple, elder, wise man that loved them.
I read that about St. Herman. He lived on an island near Kodiak. Is this right? And he had Spruce Island. He lived a very like reclusive, sort of lone. He just like got away from everyone, but people came to him. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Baronoff, the guy, was angry at him for speaking out against what enslaving the native people to go hunt sea otters. Yeah, and Herman kind of had to flee for his safety to Spruce Island, and the native people came to him.
And they came to him.
He had a school, an orphanage for the children whose parents had gone off to catch sea otters for the Russians.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be admired. And it again, we said it earlier, I think, but it reminds me of the life of Jesus, how he went all these places and people followed him. And you go, what was it? Why did people come to him rather than us feeling like we have to, really go out and like be seeker sensitive and all that? So
I hope you get to go. You should make a point to go to Kodiak and Spruce Island. There's an annual pilgrimage that takes place there on August 7 through 9 that the Russian church hosts. Anyone can come and join in.
Oh, okay.
It's beautiful, and you get to be where he lived. You'll see his grave there. And it's a wonderful place, and it's a nice experience. He was a real hero for every Christian.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. So tell me now about, let's talk about the Lausanne Orthodox Initiative. Yeah. Tell me briefly the history of that, and then we'll get into your involvement.
Okay. Yeah. Billy Graham in the 1970s started an evangelical meeting in Lausanne, Switzerland, that became a movement to try to make connections. 30 years later, in 2010, some of those evangelical leaders began to have a dialogue with Orthodox people and see that they could actually talk, and that they did have some similar things of the heart. And so the Lausanne movement opened a special branch called the Lausanne Orthodox Initiative to encourage dialogue between evangelicals and Orthodox. And when we began here in Alaska a few years ago, realizing I met some evangelicals that became good friends. They liked Orthodox Church. We began to just talk. And they said, we should work together to increase this dialogue between evangelicals and Orthodox. So we started meeting, and we contacted the Lausanne Orthodox people because one of us, of our group, his father had been one of the founding members of that Orthodox evangelical dialogue. So we started meeting, and we said, we'll hold a conference. And we held a conference, our first one in September of 2022.
Okay.
And about 25 people came, Orthodox priests. Father Michael Alexa was there, and some other priests. Father Innocent from Kodiak, as well as evangelical leaders. We had a great conference, really a great. We repeated it again a year later, and then again a third year. In the meantime, Father Michael Alexa passed away. He was a great friend and a great person in Alaska. And we decided, those of us remaining, that we would dedicate ourselves to 5 years of conferences in his memory to continue the dialogue between Orthodox and evangelicals in Alaska, because there's a big opportunity for misunderstanding in the villages. They don't understand each other's traditions. They're coming from cultural traditions. Their histories are vastly different. So we'd like to be to help them understand each other and see what they can learn. And
that's an interesting point. If I can ask on that a little bit, is you mentioned a misunderstanding in the villages. So is this specifically, Native Alaskans living in villages? They're okay. We got Orthodox coming in. We have these other, Protestants coming in, and we're confused about you guys. And this is kind of a widespread issue across our state? Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I mean, their first Christian exposure was the Russian Orthodox.
Yeah.
So they are the ones who missionized and evangelized at least the coastal regions.
Yeah.
And then now in the modern times, more like now you're getting evangelical missionaries who are really zealous and feel they have a burden to take the gospel to the world, but they'll go in completely not knowledgeable about what an icon is, or why you need a priest, or what a priest is, and all kinds of things. And they'll just start shooting, like these are idols. You can't be baptized as a baby. The sign of the cross is not, and that's caused.
Okay.
That ignorance has caused conflict and deep wounds. It's not necessary, nor is it true that those things are.
So a big part of this initiative is like education.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the 3 meetings we've had have been just great gatherings. So sharing information back and forth. Wonderful.
Yeah. And it's been going on since 2022. And of that 5 years you plan on doing, how many years in are you?
1. We'll say we're 1 in.
One.
Yeah, our first commitment to 5 more years.
Okay, so you'll be doing this through 2030.
God will.
Is the plan. And then we'll see after that.
We'll see after that.
Yeah. Cool. So one last question for you, which is my Protestant friends will want to hear just a simple, clear answer to the question, what is the gospel? How would you answer that?
Yeah. You wrote that to me, and I thought, well, that's always a great question.
Yeah.
And I think the gospel is that God has come to us in Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who is eternal, who created the world with the Father and the Spirit, seeing that we got separated from him in our past, our historic past. Somehow we're estranged from God. We don't see him. We can't talk to him like maybe he meant us to. And we die, and we fear death. So the gospel is, the good news is that the Son of God came to us in Jesus Christ, and he walked among us, and he taught us. Not only did he teach us how to live, he died in order that he could take death and make it no longer the end. Death is a doorway to life eternal. And so he destroyed death by his death and opened the way to eternal life through his resurrection. So the Orthodox emphasis certainly does understand that our sins are forgiven by the death of Christ, that whatever offenses we have offered to God in our history and even in our own personal lives, God loves us and he's willing to overlook them. But the emphasis on salvation in the Orthodox Church really is that Christ has conquered death. And he has restored us to a way to communion with God so we can get back on the path to know him like we were meant to know him. And that's what the journey of the Christian life is like. So you are born again to take up that life of knowing God. And that's the goal of the Christian life. One of my friends says, the goal of the Christian life is to learn to love like God loves. And that's why we live. And that's the gospel, as well as the work set before us now as Christians, is to become like God by his grace. Okay?
Yeah, great. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I know among my Protestant friends, that's a question we like to ask each other. We're trying to take their temperature, so to speak, like, where are you at? And just to simply ask, what is the gospel? So thank you for that answer. Yeah. Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
I enjoyed talking with you. That's great. So
yes, you too. I appreciate it. I'm really grateful for this collaboration, this initiative you're doing. I know as someone like me, I'm rather naive about the Orthodox Church. I know that's been your experience with a lot of evangelicals, and I'm continuing to learn more. And I learned a lot just now. So I thank you for the time.
Stay plugged in and just keep working in the same direction.
Yes, that sounds good. Well, thank you, sir, for coming on.
Very nice to talk with you.